Hey guys, Stackhouse here. And in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about kinematics and imparting energy to your missiles. So in this example, I have myself here, and I also have someone that I have denoted as the low altitude aggressor. Now, with that said, I just want to go ahead and put out there that this isn't to say that this is necessarily the absolute best way to go about things. This is a way that in the F-16 aircraft specifically works quite well, but there is an infinite number of scenarios that might require you to take alternative courses of action or to deviate from this entirely. Against this particular aggressor, this worked, and you might even be able to pick out some things and be like, oh, well, if you fired at this point, you might have died or something. I understand that. I get that. But I'm trying to drive a point home about some basics of kinematics and energy imparting. Of course, your mileage may vary, so let's go ahead and get into it. So, right off the bat, you see that my airspeed, I'm at Mach 1.61 versus the aggressor itself at Mach 1.24. We're at about 33 miles now, and I'm just about getting to the range where it's about time to fire in the 16. And this range, hopefully in following updates, will be kind of bumped up a little bit. So let's kind of see. Now, when I get ready to fire, as a rule of thumb, you have about 10 miles of range for every 10,000 feet that you're at with a 120. And you could maybe add an additional 10 miles if you assist it by getting your nose up about 20 degrees. So he's within range. He's kind of at the cusp. So I go ahead and fire. Now, first thing to notice is that I fired first, right? Now, this is pretty important when it comes to the engagement. So I'm faster, first of all, at my 1.4 at the time of firing, Mach 1.4, versus his altitude, which is 1.27. So there's quite some time where I've fired, and I'm already defending here. So I'm going to go ahead and start kind of dropping altitude. And we see he still hasn't fired just yet, and now he's probably fired just about now, yeah. So he is at Mach 1.26 at the time of firing, and we see that my missile is actually already nearly a quarter of the way there. So when it comes to your timeline, that's huge. That is a huge difference. You definitely don't want to be putting out missiles later than the other guy, unless you have a reason to do so. Maybe you have 4 missiles, you're trying to save them, or maybe you're just trying to get, higher PK shots, right? But just bear in mind that he is, by virtue of simply being slower, and in this case also firing later than me, he's imparted much less energy into his missile, right? So let's go ahead and we'll kind of hit play. So I'm defending already. And one thing here is that I'm defending in a pole, right? So I'm actually creating further distance for his missile to reach me than my missile has to travel to reach him. He's defending straight downwards towards me. I'm defending to the left side, right? Now, what this will equate to is a lower energy missile reaching me by the time it's time for me to defend, and comparatively, my missile will be higher energy by the time it reaches him. Now, can both of them still kill us? Most likely, certainly. But when it comes to BVR, a lot of this game is about pressure and the amount of pressure you are able to exert on your opponent compared to the amount of pressure you are able to work under without having to go cold. So, defending, and I'm going to cut left and then cut right because I want to make the distance longer. I want the missile to go left, to go right. And then I start defending harder. I thought about firing here, and I went ahead and fired again. So let's see. I fired at about Mach 1.31. I maybe put the nose up very slightly, and maybe a very short cut towards him, if that. But I'm imparting at 1.30. Let's see when he's firing. Has he fired again? So he's fired again. And on this side, he's fired at 1.44, except he's firing downwards in this case. So his missile is going to go down, bleed a bunch of energy to go up to actually meet me, right? Comparatively, when I fired, going back here, So I leveled out just a little bit, angled towards him just a little bit, right? This here. Whereas my missile has to work just slightly less, right? So my missile is only slightly less, slightly more efficient than his coming off of the rail, right? 17-mile shot here. So this one at this energy will be somewhat lethal. He might be able to defend it also, right? And this missile that he originally fired is just about trashed here. And I'm able to kind of evaluate that on my RWR. And in this case, maintaining good kinematics, staying above, 1.25. I'm going to go ahead and go over the missile now. And I can do the same with this one here, right? So that missile scrubbed a lot of energy on the way down, and now it's coming all the way back up to me again. I'm already checking on the RWR, and I know that the missile's low energy based off of where it's moving on my RWR. Now, my missiles are trashed, his missiles are trashed, so this is, again, a pressure game, right? Trying to maintain tally. He's done pretty good up until this point. Now, the issue, remember, I said a lot earlier, the issue in this is that you want to be able to exert more pressure and also be able to work under a high amount of pressure yourself. So this aggressor has put out 2 missiles, and the entire time I've maintained sensor nose. He's been in my FCR the whole time. I'm monitoring his aspect relative to me. And actually, right about here, I thought about firing again. But I actually decided not to fire because I saw his aspect was cold. And I wasn't sure if he was going to continue going cold or if he was going to turn back towards me. So at some point, I should evaluate his aspect is still changing and he's turning towards me. Right? Let me see that aspect change. And I have another missile coming off the rails. Again, maintaining good kinematics, 1.19 versus his 1.39. Now, he is faster. However, my altitude is about 20,000 feet, and his altitude is about 10,000 feet. So he's in significantly thicker air than me. I'm shooting a high energy missile that's plunging down onto him versus his missiles, which will be higher energy off the rail, but they're going upwards and fighting through thicker air to get to me, while I'm also defending downwards too. All right, so again, putting out more pressure, getting that missile off the rail first, expecting to defend hard. At this range, I know, okay, this might be some serious defending that's required. Right? Looking at him outside, I see, okay, he's got a missile off the rail. Gonna go ahead and defend here. Again, maintaining good kinematics. And it looks like this one maybe tracked and then maybe stopped tracking in the very beginning. Don't even know what this 120 was doing. But again, if we look, let's go back to the point that the missile was fired. At the point that he fired, let's take a look. And this is, I fired at 30:49. And he fired at 30:54, right? So 5 seconds, okay? But in this 5 second of time where it took for him to fire, my missile is already a quarter of the way there to him, okay? So he's going to have more pressure on him than I will necessarily have on me. And again, trying to maintain as well as I can. Now I'm defending harder because I'm expecting to have to defend a lot harder over this missile. I realize, oh, this missile's not a factor. And immediately I want to get pressure back onto my adversary. Now my missile, being that it's plunging down onto him, is higher energy state missile. Still trashed though. At 6 miles, again, got another high PK shot here. Missile's going to be plunging straight down onto him. Now, in these parameters, I would generally say it's very important to defend cold. At this time, you're either going to defend completely cold or you're immediately going to be in the notch. Because in reality, this is a somewhat dangerous parameters to be at 17,000 feet versus his low altitude. Slant range is still good, but definitely coming off of the rail, you want to be defending quite hard. In this case, for this guy, I evaluated that he probably wouldn't be able to get sensor nose. But if you're in a competition like, say, TAL or some other thing, I wouldn't normally have taken that type of risk for this type of shot. But again, this is just about the amount of pressure you can exert. So trying to maintain some form of ability to maintain aggression, and he tries to go into the notch. So again, he's not putting out any pressure onto me now. And at this point, I recognize he has no possibility to have sensor nose, so I'm already starting to commit back into him. And in this case, he did die from this missile. But even if he did avoid this missile, I would be queuing a 120 onto him about right now, right? And then in the best case, maybe that 120, maybe he notches that, but then I would have just stayed hot, and I would have just plowed him with a 9x in the end, or a 9M or whatever. So ending altitude about 12,000. Could have probably been a little bit lower at the end, but I really didn't want this to kind of turn into a notch fight if it didn't have to. So that's a little bit about kinematics and energy imparting. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you in the next videos.